Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 11 of this embracing and exciting series on emotion and motivation. Today, we're going to engage the notion of goal setting and striving in the context of developing group presentations. For the class, it will be the group presentations we're doing on the various emotional classes. And I have some interesting critiques, I guess, and hints around motivation and goal setting that can be applied to any, basically everyday life. So, as is my as is my pattern, I am going to actually be criticizing a lot of academic research as well for its kind of narrow focus on something so central to life as motivation, self-esteem, and setting of goals. Oftentimes, academia tends to be, and especially academic research tends to be very mentalized, very cognitively focused, but also quite abstract, quite removed from just everyday life in such a way that these models oftentimes pretend as if they have a greater import and greater impact and are more universal than they actually are. So without further ado, we're going to put me down in the corner here and go right at it. The only one that I'm requiring for this one and the only article that I'm investigating is Reeves, Chapter 8, From Understanding Motivation and Emotion. That's 5th edition, Hoboken, New Jersey, Wiley. And here's my main bone to pick with this research, and I'll go into greater detail as we actually examine the document. For all its highfalutin airs, academia and research tends to focus on negating the negative. And this means for reasons of survival. In other words, we say we're primarily motivated to survive. Again, this goes back to evolutionary psychology, cognitive people who emphasize behaviorism and stimulus response, action reaction, really emphasize this as well. There is a new branch of psychology that's emerging called positive psychology, which really is about embracing the positive, okay? And here's why it's so important. Most of this old psychology is about negating the negatives, right? Again, really thinking that we're driven by the desire to eliminate threat and to create a sort of comfort or neutrality in our lives, okay? And they see in this sense, neutrality, it's a desirable end state. That's the cessation of suffering and maybe some time for us to do some things that are amusing without having to worry about life. Now, that doesn't actually create meaning and it doesn't actually create purpose in life. Why are we even living to begin with is an important question. And just to be sitting around buying stuff we like and then aging and then dying isn't a very compelling answer to that. Nor is it a psychology and a psychological support system that says, here, we'll give you a pill for your ills, right? And maybe even some pills that'll make you feel happy if you're into the drug scene. And somehow just avoiding pain and going to pleasure is going to provide meaning. It doesn't. Because frankly, we have a limited amount of time on this planet. And our lasting impact really has to do with what we can give, what we can create, what we can contribute. And these are all aspects of positive psychology. Like I said down here, creating, learning, growing, transforming, contributing, giving, sharing, feeling. These are the things that make life worth living, and these are the things that create meaning. These are the things that create purpose. The cognitive can help with that by systematically saying things like, hey, you thought that was going to be really enjoyable. It turned out not to be. Why was that? But it doesn't, cognition does not serve as, I think, the center of goal setting. And like I said up here, life is not math. Here's where two negatives don't make a positive. Negating the negative doesn't make a real life. So let's keep going through this and really examine this document as a way to really explain and understand this, okay? So here we go. It starts with, mirrors don't lie. Well, lately your mirror's been saying you added a few pounds, right? And I'm going, yes, mirrors do lie, or at least they don't capture the whole truth, which is your potential, which is your inner reality, which are your motivations, which are your feelings, okay? Mirrors don't capture that. So if you're going to say that the mirrors are capturing the whole reality, then they do lie. So, and then it goes again. Here's this negating the negative. Jogging seems sensible if you want to diet and you've gained too much pounds. So you go at first to enjoy the outdoors and you have a sense of accomplishment. But as weeks go by, your time and attention gets competed for other things, and before you know it, it's going down and down and down. And their answer to this is if you get a pedometer, a device, right, that shows you how many steps you're walking, right? Really, you can set a goal for how many steps you're going to do, and you'll be more successful at getting out. Okay. But even with that, there can be distractions and so forth. So again, here we have a quantity-based or measurement-based pushing for motivation, and really, and then that's not equal to what I call a quality-based or pulling type of thing. Again, this quantity and measurement tends to be extrinsic. You're making yourself do something. You're pushing yourself to do something. That can create motivation, but it's not, in my experience and other research shows, not a very long-lasting thing. As we saw with other research, intrinsic motivation, in which you're being pulled forward or your desire is drawing you forward, it's much more effective in developing not only long-term motivation, but a much healthier and more affinity or more affirmative attachment to your goal. If you're always whipping yourself over the back to get something done or crank out so many steps or sit-ups, it gets tiring. And you're treating yourself like an object. So after a while, you're actually going against yourself. When you're actually going with yourself and you're thinking about diet, for instance, I've used an example up here, diet as healthy, positive affinity and desire for healthy foods and the way they make you feel, like I feel when I eat a green salad. I can tell you it just affects my body. I'm in tune with that. If you give me a banana split on one side and a healthy green salad on the other, I'll pick the healthy green salad, not because I'm denying my temptation. I actually affirmatively desire the salad more. Now you can say, Zeus, that requires real discipline and training. Not so much. What's happened is I have been more in tune with the kind of ways that this salad makes my body feel. And for some reason, my body is really, really into green stuff. It just energizes me. I can literally palpably feel when that salad goes into me, my body kind of wake up. And I can palpably feel when I put a bunch of sweet dairy treats down my mouth, my body just starts to shut down. It just goes, okay? So for me, it's a very actually logical, but also feeling-oriented reason to distinguish between the two of them. Typical diet does not go that way. Typical diet talks about how not to be bad. Right? Don't eat the bad things. Force yourself to exercise, and you too will look good in that mirror. Not smart. Again, here's the negative of the negative, believing it makes a positive, and it doesn't. Actually, and we already saw this in the first week of this class, they talked about dieting not working because it oftentimes all this pushing yourself creates fatigue. You're going against yourself. And especially when you hit failure through this pushing, it can lead into depression, right? And more failure, which makes you even more likely to indulge in the wrong kinds of food. This is a negative cycle going downward. Whereas this positive, not the negative, but this positive notion of healthy helps you go up. In fact, it's so healthy that you might take a day in which you just allow yourself to eat whatever you want. And you find out, in terms of, again, self-determination theory, that when given the choice in complete freedom, you actually don't want the junk food that much. You take a little bit and you go, oh, that's good enough, because you're not forcing yourself not to do it, and you're really developing positive relationship with healthy foods. So all of a sudden the sting and the attraction and temptation of all this nasty food, or not nasty, but let's say sweet and not terribly nutritious food, starts to fade. And that's really what the focus of this class is. If you notice, we're going from these more antisocial negative emotions to more positive emotions. And when I say antisocial and negative, again, let me stress, that doesn't mean grief is negative per se. Grief can be a doorway into deepening and learning. So when I say that, I'm saying that probably better ways to put it are unpleasant or more pleasant emotions or enjoyable emotions. In general, fear, anxiety, and so forth tend to be negative or tend to be antisocial. It tend to keep you away from others. And things like joy, appreciation, and so forth tend to be more uplifting and tend to bring you toward others. But like I said, either one of them can go the other direction. if we don't develop a very healthy and full breadth understanding of what's going on. So let's keep going here. Uh, yeah, the cognitive perspective on motivation. Cognitions are mental events, and I said, yet our lives and what motivates us are almost entirely emotional events. Cognition is a tool to understand and orient feeling. That's my perspective in this. Cognitive and the behaviorist really emphasize the stimulus and response, action, reaction, as if we're just organisms or machines, okay? They don't really recognize creative activity and proactive activity at all, okay? And they use terms like, up here, causal determinants of action, as if we're being caused. And there's very little emphasis on the intrinsic desire and purpose as, again, creating action through a kind of pull. Like I said, positive psychology is beginning to change this, but it's fairly new. So we're at the cutting edge when we begin to make these kinds of critiques and so forth. Going on, plans, the importance of plans, okay? And right here it says, according to these pioneers in research, people have mental representations of the ideal states of their behavior, environmental objects and events. And notice the language again, very object oriented, okay? And I said, problem is when you grow to grow, true stimulus must exceed your mental representation. Yeah, in order for growth to really happen, you can't just have a limited mental representation and then achieve it. Really, the process of growth gets you to see that there are things beyond yourself that you weren't even aware of. And that changes your representation. They don't really talk about that. You notice a lot of what we did in our things is use surprise, right? To get people out of their expectations and patterns and to get them into another way of looking at something. And surprise was almost necessary for there to be a successful interaction with another person. If you're trying to change the dynamic pattern, the emotional pattern between you and your mate, for instance, falling into the same old stuff doesn't work, no matter how hard you try and no matter what kind of goals you set. It's the surprise and using a different approach that creates a different frame and creates positive possibilities. Again, this whole notion of removing incongruity. If you are arguing with your mate, husband, wife, whomever, and you're just trying to remove the difference between the two of you, it's just going to create more tension because the other person is going to be like, don't try to erase me. Don't try to remove my difference. So this doesn't work well in relationships. Now, contrast that to trying a surprising thing where you say, listen, we're going to stop this and I'm going to sit down, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to empathize and see your point of view. A lot of you talked about being very surprised. The reaction was surprise to this. And many of you had successful interactions that way. You're not denying the other person or trying to change them or remove incongruity. You're trying to exactly accept their difference and allow that to be part of the conversation that moves the both of you to a new place. And so that's the difference between negating the negative, right? And accepting and embracing a positive, even one that you don't have in your head or even one that is bigger than you. So it's a very powerful and new way to look at engaging the world, especially goals and motivation. So again, I take real exception to their way of looking at things here. Again, it says they're using a mismatch between two things, incongruity as pushing us or driving us. And I said up here, what about the positive desire to achieve? You're driven by your affinity to feel, to become stronger and to grow. Does anyone really go about a challenge this way? I want to meet this goal and my ideal state and my real state is down here. And what I need to do is, eliminate the incongruity or, make the distance of that incongruity less. Most people say, I have a goal here. What do I need to develop in myself to help me move toward that goal or move into it? It's not so much driven by the need to erase the difference between the two as it is built to actually march from one place to the other in a positive way. So I don't get this at all. The framework of removing incongruity, yes. When you're having a really difficult time with your mate, you want to solve the problem. You want to solve the threat. You want to solve the discomfort. And we may use short-term methods, like simply just being nice to our mate so that they don't get angry in order to, quote, remove the incongruity. But that's not a long-lasting plan. It'll happen again. And it's just like popping a pill every time you have a pain. Instead of getting to the root of it, you're just taking care of the symptoms. So again, removing the incongruity to me seems like just taking care of the symptoms and not actually removing or viewing or moving into or learning into the root cause of it. When you learn into the root cause of it, a lot of people avoid that because they're going to say, oh, we're going to find that my mate and I are so substantively different that we just can't even talk. But, you know, first of all, you shouldn't avoid that if that is the case. But secondly, most of your examples, almost really all of them, have shown that once you moved into the root and you had a generous attitude that was inclusive and positive toward the other person, good things did arrive. You got to a different way of relating that removed some of these symptoms from happening in the future. So it's a much more of an investment. It's a little bit slower. It requires more patience and attention, but it's a lot more effective in meeting the goal if your goal is to have a growing, a strengthening relationship between you and another person. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. If you're pushing yourself, whacking yourself on the back, I'm going to do this many reps, I'm going to do this, your body's going to rebel after a while. They don't want an adversarial relationship. When some of you gave the example of feeling kind of anxious or whatever, and then going to the gym, you talked about it in positive terms, feeling better about yourself, being able to breathe, your brain being able to sort of settle, and your body actually working in a different way, making you feel healthier, very much like the way I was talking about eating green salads. So instead of just, quote unquote, eliminating incongruity, yes, as we do in this class, experiment with different ways of seeing and doing things and see what happens, right? That tends to change your frame, your knowledge, and your wisdom, and it changes your mind. It informs your growth, as with our class. It develops capacity and craft knowledge. So again, it's a much more affirmative way. Instead of trying to erase difference, what we're doing is we're embracing the difference and allowing that embrace of difference move us into a new frame of thinking. And that excitement of that new frame of thinking and new ways of experiencing things, making us more capable of reaching our goals. So again, a lot of problems with academic research doesn't address life purpose, our unique gifts, especially those things we're not aware of, which experiment and embracing a difference does help us do. We're not just hermetically sealed units here. We're actually people, and interactive people driven by and drawn out by relationship. So events don't just happen. It says, this one goes, events happen in life. And I go, events don't just happen. We can proactively invite them, okay? We may become inspired or strangely compelled by a trip overseas, right? Let's say we didn't even know we liked to travel, but we just happened to be traveling. And all of a sudden we're just turned on like, wow, I know this is really central to my life and really central to a core enjoyment. And I want to do a job, or I want to have this involved in my life more, okay? What was once not a goal in your mind because you really wasn't in your universe, now your universe is opened up and now you have a different goal. That serendipity or surprise has allowed us to get to a heart desire and learn and grow in a specific area, okay? Again, terms like adaptive rather than creative and corrective rather than transformative really show you about the negative focus of a lot of academic research. It's predict and control based, which comes out of a notion of survival and a notion of threat, right? Avoiding threat. We want to move beyond that if we're human beings that have a purpose in life. We want to be able to develop joy and accept challenge and accept opportunity. And that's the key word here. Instead of incongruity, the key word in this class is opportunity. I don't see the distance or the difference as something to erase, but the distance or something, or the differences between us and other people or where we are now and where we could be as a way to open up opportunity. Aha! And then we can experiment with different ways of either getting to our goal or even becoming open to other goals we're not even aware of. So again, how do we do that? Experiment and we test through our lives to see what works for us or not. I was amazed when I was in high school. These school counselors would give us these job tests, okay? And dependent upon these cognitive variables and these things we like, I came up, it was ludicrous. I came up as really going to be a carpenter, an actor, and an engineer. Just these things aren't even related to each other at all. Okay, they never said I was going to be a writer or a public intellectual, which is basically what I've become. Okay, I don't slot in, and most people don't slot into categories. Okay, budding talent is not recognized by goal setting and by the mind. It's recognized in some sense in the heart. And the mind can help that fashion itself into a career or fashion that self into an interest in school or a major in college. Another example, I took biology because I thought, well, this is sort of what I'm good at. And then I started taking classes in existentialism, philosophy, religion, and I was so much more intrinsically enthralled and passionate by that. And I finally graduated with a biology degree, did some work in a lab, etc. And I realized it wasn't me. I went back to graduate school in philosophy of education, and it was a much better fit. Now, I met my goals. I did well in school, but it didn't actually, meeting my goals didn't create satisfaction because ultimately my ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. I climbed all the way up, found it was leaning against the wrong wall, climbed back down, moved the ladder, and was able to adjust and adapt, okay? The more intense part of ourselves is deeper and more subtle, okay? And the more accurate part of ourselves is down there. And I'm hoping this class, and I'm hoping psychology and some of the classes you're taking are allowing you to get to that. Not a survival mentality, but more to a thriving mentality. Now, it's important to be able to survive. It's important to be able to set basic goals and organize yourself and go forward. I'm not dismissing that, but it's a both and thing. It's those things for us to better develop what we can offer others and better allow ourselves to enjoy as people ourselves. So, okay, here we go again. Discrepancy is talked about, produces negative emotions, and we fight against those negative emotions by trying to erase the incongruity or discrepancy. We've already talked about how that's not probably the best way to put it. And here I have on the side here, which can be managed by this anxiety, frustration, or despair, okay, I say is better managed by learning into the situation. Otherwise, you can expend more effort in the wrong way and become even more frustrated. We'll talk more about that later. But this whole cattle prod approach to pushing and motivating is not nearly as effective as the attraction approach. Again, cattle prod approach is more extrinsic, attraction is more intrinsic. We've already shown now intrinsic motivation is a lot more compelling and effective. You can see this in terms of the type of teacher out there. Usually the drill sergeant teacher that asks you to push you and keeps piling demands on you, okay, can pull some excellence out of you, but probably not as much as enthusiastic, caring teacher who's really good at what they do and helps you connect with the material. That's what I'm trying to do here. And again, if you look at their charts, you go from negative to neutrality. And I said, where is the positive, right? You go from stuck in traffic to driving without interference. I said, how about driving with enjoyment? Okay, there's another layer here. The job you have, the job you want. I said, how about a job better than what you want? Again, their framework doesn't allow that extra expansion and deepening, okay? How skillful you are, how skillful the guy on television is. And I said, how about becoming better than the guy on TV, okay? And their current GPA, right? Extrinsic again. GPA needed to make the dean's list, extrinsic again. And I said down here, actually, again, doing grades for your own purposes, not to make the dean's list, but intrinsic purposes. For me, I wanted to have a 3.5 when I got out undergraduate. More than that, I thought it was going to be, I'm spending too much time in books and not enough time in life. Under that, I wasn't expending enough intellectual effort. I ended up with a 3.52, which is perfect. I met my goal, almost right on the nose, okay? And again here, just one more. Messy, cluttered desktop, clean, well-organized desktop. Why have a clean, organized desktop? So you can actually write and produce something. So again, that's the positive thing that's being left off this list here. Here is my basic point, and that is, you can create a discrepancy by putting a rock in your shoe. And you can create a pleasure by removing that pain or removing that discrepancy. But it is an artificial way to create motivation and meaning. You've basically just removed a barrier you placed in there and you've gone back to ground zero, right? What you want to do is take that rock, leave that rock out of your shoe, go on a walk, right? And find something that exceeds your limited understanding and your desire and allow yourself to grow. That's a lot more important. And I said this notion again of discrepancy reduction, it's just negating the negative, okay? It's just crazy, negating the difference. I said, yes, I want to get from town A to town B faster. I can either bend time and space to bring town A and town B together or closer, which is not really possible unless you're some kind of magician, or I can find more effective modes for traveling between them, okay? Again, positive psychology is more about finding the more effective modes rather than trying to control your environment or to push yourself into closing discrepancies. We're just simply growing and moving in a positive direction. We have a point, we may approach that point, get a new idea, and then go from that point to another, and so forth. So there is some importance to goal setting and goal striving, but it best occurs in an intrinsic way, and it best occurs when we when we're being affirmatively and positively motivated to pull toward it instead of pushing ourselves. I said this. I mean, this is academic for me. Hoo-ha. Discrepancy reduction corresponds to plan-based corrective motivation, whereas discrepancy creation corresponds to goal-setting motivation, and discrepancy reduction is a reactive deficiency overcoming, revolves around a feedback system, whereas discrepancy creation is proactive. I mean, come on, all right? There's just so many $10 words there. Here's the deal, okay? Here's the deal. Are we going to go simply to some outside standard of excellence, something outside and given to us? In religion, a church may say, give us money, behave morally, and you're going to get into heaven. Again, instrumental thinking, not intrinsic, extrinsic. Okay. Politics may say, kiss enough butt, kiss enough babies, cow toward to the party machine, and you're going to get into office. Again, instrumental, outside standard. All right. Economics, buy enough stuff, keep up with the Joneses, get the American dream. Do you see how this is going? You're eliminating your discrepancies, but it's instrumental, it's extrinsic, it's other people's standards, not yours, okay? You're not really being allowed to develop and understand and be more creative in your engagement with the world. It's just meeting other people's expectations. That's really not what we need. That's the old industrial style era mentality, you know, making little units that do the same thing and are all quality control. I'm a fan of diversity. I'm a fan of pluralism. I'm a fan of being able to reach out and to embrace difference rather than erase difference. And I think that just is it leads to a much more vital life. And that's what we're trying to do in this class. Like I said, standards are extrinsic, not intrinsic, okay? So there's a problem here. There's a kind of anti-creative programming built around taking something in or trying to match a standard or internalizing some external standard instead of really exploring and experimenting whether or not you want to be a part of that environment or that standard, okay? So again, we talked about having a negative push orientation. Versus this motivation or pull. So I won't, we've already discussed that and pretty good. Well, you know, people with goals outperform people without goals, duh, right? You've instilled in yourself to do so many sit-ups instead of just saying, hey, I'll just do something without it, okay? But there's not really a discrepancy here. A desire is motivating you to some goal. There's not a really discrepancy. It's not like you feel pain for not doing it. You're simply going for it, okay? This is where I don't exactly agree with them either, okay? And again, to talk about goal, now this works. The two bits of this that I like is that goal difficulty and goal specificity actually help, okay? And we'll talk about that, all right? They create a positive feedback loop. This is what this class is trying to do. We share emotional situations, we try experiments, we have some success, and we go for a more difficult emotional challenge, okay? That's how we build up capacity, that's how we build up wisdom, that's how we build up these sorts of things that I'm talking about here. Again, goal specificity is very important, right? Specificity refers to how clearly a goal informs the performer, right? Goal specificity is important because specific goals draw attention to what one needs to do and reduces ambiguity in thought. and variability in performance. Remember, when I'm asking you questions on discussion, I'm not just asking you to respond to something. And to a very vague question or a very broad question, I actually outline experiments, I outline ways to engage, allow you to create specific feedback from your own life, okay? This is also true, I found, in self-esteem research. If you say to someone, you're such a nice person, it really doesn't have much of an effect because it's not specific enough and it doesn't, I guess, challenge enough, or it doesn't really help really hit what a person is good at. If you said, you do this job well for this reason, or I really, really learn from you and in these ways, then you're going to be much more likely to increase somebody else's self-esteem. You're letting them know specifically what they've helped what has helped enhance you, okay? And you've also shown the ways in which you've increased. It's kind of related to difficulty, okay? Which allow you to grow and increase your ability, okay? So again, this creates an energizing of the process. And this allows and creates feedback that allows someone to persist when you get that kind of positive feedback, right? It allows you, well, like I said here, to draw from a deeper reservoir or reach beyond your present capability. It's almost an act of faith, okay? And then when you get positive feedback in that, as I try to give you in this class by giving you specific feedback in my Ask Dr. Seuss segment, it tends to hopefully reinforce your confidence and your understanding of your own competence in beginning to take more risks in this class and beginning to be able to be more deeper and engage this on a more personal level. It does say here that motivation is not simply enough. You also need things like ability, training, coaches, and resources. There are outside things we do need, okay? But they're not patent. Ability, for instance, I found in my working with learning disabled students that it's not their ability per se, but their learning style, which is creating the discrepancy, right? And no one's picking up on it, including them. And I help, for that, I help to eliminate or create a connection, not eliminate a discrepancy, but use a different way of their thinking to connect it with the material using a different mechanism. And they did very, very successfully, okay? And I also said this is why social justice and healthy relationships are so forth. Healthy relationships create high-level mentorship. Social justice creates access to resources that disadvantaged groups didn't have beforehand. And these are extraordinarily important in you being able to meet your potential, meet your goals, and be motivated. You can't live on bread alone. So, and like I said, it's experiential and applied, not merely abstract or intellectual. You have to combine theory and practice in making this system work. This is actually a good chart, and I agree with this chart here, okay? But, I'm just saying that you need these other things, resources, mentorship, and so forth, to make this, to grease it, to make oil for this to work. And you also need a much more positive, pull-oriented, intrinsically driven motivation rather than just extrinsically. So we've already talked about this. In Ask Dr. Seuss, I try to give specific feedback, right, to help you understand why what you're doing is great, is wonderful and amazing, and how it's teaching me about this class and helping me learn more about other people's experience. Typical research just acts as if you're an individual, and oftentimes online classes will as well. They say, do this work, turn it in, I evaluate it, give it back to you, turn it in, and so forth. And maybe you learn a little bit about how to do that. By using these videos, I'm trying to be a lot more interactive. It's a lot more work, but again, I am more impassioned and motivated to do it. Here's the big thing. If it were just about eliminating discrepancies, then this would never be an issue, okay? But here's the problem, okay? You won't be motivated to continue to strive if you continue to put in higher effort and get lower results. That's the one thing this article simply does not teach you. Now, going back to what I think it was the first recording I had here, turns out in self-esteem, and this is Martin Covington's work, okay, that a lot of people will put in low effort, okay, and get low success, and they'll even pretend they're too cool to try because they've tried to high effort and they got low success and they didn't want to be labeled a dummy. Okay, so this low effort, low success was preferable because then you could at least save some of your pride and self-esteem. The best place, obviously, all of us should be is what I call the star. High effort, high success, right? Where we able to continue to push our bounds and continue to link up effort with success. Again, this low effort, low success and high effort, low success, oftentimes that happens because their way of thinking and engaging the world doesn't match the institutional approach. And that's where we need more customized ways of learning, because you can get a lot more people in this box. And I also criticize people who are low effort, high success. They're not pushing themselves. They're coasting. Okay. So we basically want to get everyone in this box. This one in the upper right hand, high effort, high success. Okay. And there are different ways to do that. I'm trying to get you in this box in this class. And again, I talked about the link between emotion, motivation, and self-esteem identity. It's very clear there, as well as my goals in terms of goal settings for this class are specific, but they are capacities for you. They're not just simply you will understand this concept or understand that concept. I want you to be capable, to stretch yourself and know your material. I want you to be critical, to analyze content and to challenge yourself. I want you to be creative, to apply insights to your life. And I want you to be compassionate, to connect with yourself and others, especially in these group projects. So again, there's this big chart here, and I just want to say, okay, you're correct. You can look it over. It brings us on down and says that if you do these things like difficult and specific goals, you go through increased effort, increased persistence, increased attention, increased strategic planning, you get increased energy, increased direction, you enhance performance, and then you get feedback. Well, if that feedback leads to, right, dissatisfaction or low performance, it says here, oh, then you're going to increase your effort persistence. No, oftentimes people give up. This is a completely naive. They're saying I'm wasting my effort. I'm not doing what I should be doing. I'm trying so hard and I'm getting nowhere. This is useless. So again, oftentimes that happens because the teaching methods or the strategies that are being used aren't effective to the way that that person sees the world. Their actual gifts aren't being addressed. And sometimes it really does mean this is not what I'm supposed to be doing in life. My parents want me to be a lawyer. I hate it. I'm not interested in it. I'm not even good at it. So again, this doesn't mean, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to increase your desire, nor that you should increase your desire to continue in your goals. They may be the wrong goals. Like I said, the ladder may be against the wrong wall. Okay. So in terms of the group presentation, here's what I'm trying to do, and here's how this links up. Okay. I want you to use your talents and joys. These are intrinsic motivation to derive enthusiasm. And I've said in this description, I want each of you to actually participate in a way that really draws upon a unique talent. And then just bring those together, okay? Group affirmation and support, positive psychology, okay? Helping to motivate you rather than decrease discrepancies or whatever, or threats, seeing each other's different talent as a threat. One person tries to take over the whole project, as you probably noticed in some others, okay? I want each of you to use your specific, unique capability and bring it together, okay? Simple, specific goals with some creative difficulty. If you notice, I really made simple, specific goals about how to do it. There's 5 steps, basically, to go through this. So you don't have to think about the format, and you can use your creativity within those specific and somewhat challenging goals. And finally, usefulness in your life and profession, and not just getting a grade in this class, is what motivates this, right? So again, this is how it relates with how this article relates with our group presentation. Really look over these. This is what I'm really trying to get. These are my goals, specific and challenging goals for you in the presentation. I'm not sure too much of this is important. I'm noticing, yeah, we've already talked about encounter inevitable distractions and interruptions, okay? Again, what's the best way to limit distractions, right? Simplicity, okay? Again, another design that I'm trying to bring in through here. And finally, oh my gosh, we're heading up against 40 minutes, but that's just fine. Instead of their cycle, okay, their cycle of goal, direction, whatever, here's my cycle, okay? Formulate good questions based on wisdom, based on usefulness, based on intrigue, okay? Experiment and test them. authentically engage and learn from these authentic tests and these relationships that you have engaged, okay? Find better ways to do things and share those better ways and go back around again. So I think that that's more motivating. I think it provides a simpler framework. It's not so cognitive, it's full body. You're using your mind and your heart to do this. And I think, frankly, that it's going to work better. At least it has worked better for me. Now, again, you can try it. You may be different than I, so you can try their way as well. But give me some feedback on this if you like, and I'd be very interested. So that pretty much does the readings for this week. Again, when it comes to the readings, you don't have to come up with your own insights. If you like an insight that I brought up or a point that I brought up, just reference it and apply it in a unique way to your own life and situation. And that's all I'm asking for. Don't pile work on yourself. Let me do some of the work. Let me help you allow some insights to work their way into life, and then you could tell me about how they're working in your life. Again, this is all part of the craft of developing a way to apply academics, apply some of the insights, apply group work to the enhancement of your life and the life of those around you. So until next time, this is Zeus Yamionis signing off. We'll see you. Bye.